caught in a tangled web of love, lies, and late-night confessions. I faced the ultimate betrayal, my wife's whispered secret of an affair. But as the truth unraveled, it wasn't just about who she'd been with, it was about the tangled strings of trust and deceit that had us both questioning everything we knew. Welcome to my story. Every sip of the drink might just be poison, and every dance could lead to a downfall. Subscribe to our channel for more dramatic tales of infidelity that'll have you on the edge of your seat. Do I believe her when she admits it or when she denies it? It was a fun evening. We had dinner at a nice restaurant and then decided to go downstairs a little and dance at a bar we hadn't been to before, Bar Coastal Breeze. We both worked in a reputable company farther from the city centre. We heard the drinks at Foggy Horizon Fair. The music was good and the dance floor was big. I never got tired of spending time with her, and tonight was no exception. In fact, it was more fun than usual because she was drinking. She rarely drank more than 2 drinks in an evening, but today she had 4. I don't know what made me want to drink that night, but like I said, it was fun. She was a happy drunk and I was curious to see how her drunkenness would affect our night. I was looking forward to finding out. We both loved to dance and, as usual, when we went somewhere, she was accosted by several men who wanted to dance with her, and again as usual, she refused them all. As we were leaving the bar, she was struggling with her coat, hitting herself over the head with the purse she was holding in her hand, and tried to put that hand into the sleeve of her coat and got upset when it didn't fit. Then she tripped on her way out the door and fell into my arms. I caught her and she looked at me. She stumbled a couple more times, but we made it to the car. "Am I hubby right?" she asked, as I struggled to get her into the car. I was already starting to think that there probably wouldn't be any action tonight. "Yes, that's true," I said, laughing. "What did you say?" I looked at her and she lost consciousness. I took her home and put her to bed. I hadn't rested her often over the past 3 years, and it never ceased to amaze me how beautiful her body was. She liked to sleep naked, so I left her like that. However, tonight was different. As I undressed her, I couldn't help but wonder if Richard Brown, whoever he was, had undressed her and put his hands on her breasts, or if she slept with him. Did she like it? I barely slept that night, but she slept soundly. She woke up only at noon the next day. I had just made myself another cup of coffee. In fact, brewed is too strong a word. I placed a small bag in the coffee maker, pressed the button, and coffee filled my cup. I then added some Bailey to it and sat at the kitchen table sipping it. This was my 4th cup of the day. My usual limit is 2 for a short. Cassandra stumbled into the kitchen. She placed the bag in the coffee maker, placed her cup under the dispenser, and stood there waiting for her cup to be filled. When this happened, she picked it up and came and sat on the stool next to me. We sat lost in our thoughts and drank coffee. I spoke first. "Who is Richard Brown?" "What, who is Richard Brown?" "I don't know." She just looked at me. "Why do you ask?" I took another sip of coffee before speaking. "Because last night, before you passed out, you told me you had slept with him." "By what you told me? You slept with him?" "Michael, I have no idea what you're talking about. I knew Sophia for almost 4 years. We'd been married for the last 3 years, well, almost 3 years. I was a bartender and still am. Actually, she was a waitress at the same establishment. I worked there for over a year before she started working. We tried to work the same shifts, but it didn't always work out that way. Sometimes I worked during the days and she worked at night and vice versa. Shortly after she started working there, she and I had our first date. Less than a month after that, we had sex for the first time and had been doing it at least 4 times a week since then. I just looked at her. She spoke. Damn it. I was drunk, and we've both seen enough drunks to know they can say anything and most of what they say is true. I thought. We sat in silence finishing our coffee. "I'm going to get dressed," she said, with an important look. She took both our cups and, as usual, washed them and put them in the sink to dry. I always loved watching her do this, because her breasts jiggled when she washed them, and I loved watching her breasts jiggle. In my mind, I saw Richard Brown holding them in his hands and rocking them back and forth. We hardly spoke that day or that evening at work. Some people believe that living and working together puts a lot of strain on a marriage, but in our case that didn't seem to be the case still. The next 2 days were the same, very little talking. No touching at work. It seemed to me that Sophia spent more time with some of her clients than necessary, but perhaps it was my imagination. Finally, I said, okay, I've had enough. I either want her life back or this marriage is over. I agree, said Sophia. I'm tired of you looking at me like you're wondering when I'm going to take the next client out into the backyard and sleep with him. So say what's on your mind. Well done, in wine there is truth, but the truth lies in the wine. Almost every civilized culture in the world has a saying similar to this, because they have all experienced the fact, Sophia, that from the lips of children and drunkards you will hear the truth. You said you had sex with Richard Brown. You had no reason to say that, and I never suggested that you'd slept with anyone else since we got married, but it was clear as day from your drunken lips. I had sex with Richard Brown. If it was before we got married, it's okay. If not, then we have a problem. Then we have a problem because I don't know why I said it. Or even if I said it. What do you mean? If you said it. Of course you said it. Why would I pull that name out of thin air and lie about something like that? Tell me why I should trust you. Michael, obviously you don't believe me. So it looks like we're in a stalemate. She said yes. I think so. The stalemate continued for another week. For the first time since the beginning of our relationship, we did not have sex. We both had old model cars because we were saving up to buy a house, but I planned to surprise her with a new car for Christmas that week. Due to the impasse, we drove to work separately. On Thursday, when I came to work, I kept expecting her to show up, but another waiter was working at Sophia's usual tables. I called the night manager. Nancy, why does Sarah work at Sophia's tables? Because she called this morning and took the day off. She didn't tell me anything about it. I said maybe you two should communicate better. We were busy and I couldn't call her, so I waited until things calmed down. I took a break and called her. No answer, straight to voicemail. It's 9:30 in the evening and she's not answering her calls. I said, looking up and seeing Nancy heading towards me. Nancy, Sophia isn't answering her calls. I think I'd better go home and find out what's going on. That's a good idea. She just called and quit. She said she wouldn't come back. I have to go. I dialed the phone, taking my coat off the hook and buttoning it up to protect myself from the cold air. She still didn't answer. I unlocked the door to our apartment and entered. She wasn't there. During a search of the apartment, it was discovered that some of her clothes and cosmetic bag were missing. It was almost midnight. I called her parents. Any news from Sophia? I asked when her father answered, we have no idea. Where is she? Probably at Melanie's. Andy, what's happening? I told him the short version. It's better get together before it's too late. I called Melanie. She and Sophia had been best friends since they were 3 years old. Nobody answered, so I left a message. Please ask Sophia to call me. Apparently the stalemate had been broken and she had taken the first step. I kept going over in my head what I could have done differently and always got the same result, nothing. She got drunk and said what she said. I think I reacted the way the average husband would react. I lay down on a bed and tried to sleep. Unsuccessfully, I got up and tried to eat. Unsuccessfully. Around mid-morning, I called her brother. Sorry, unsalted ice. Michael, the only thing I can tell you is that you really are in trouble. I called Melanie again. Hello, Michael. She said, do you have news from Sophia? I have. Do you know where she is? She is here with me. Can I talk to her? Not now. She's really angry and disappointed that you don't believe her. When should I believe her when she says she slept with him? Or when denies that she slept with him? Don't be an idiot. What should I do? Tell me. What should I do? You can trust her. Damn it. I just asked you if I should believe her. And she admits it or denies it. You need to get a grip. Michael, your marriage is over. Pull yourself together. She started it. She needs to prove to me that she didn't cheat with this guy. How exactly will she do this? I don't know. Take a lie detector test. Swear on a stack of Bibles, whatever. I don't care how she does it. Maybe you should prove that she did it innocent or proven guilty. Right. But damn it. She confessed. I told you to pull yourself together. Michael, your marriage is over. She hung up. Maybe you should prove that she did it. That's what Melanie said at 11:00. I called work. Nancy wasn't there. The day manager was. I told him the story and told him I needed some rest. He'd already heard some of this from Nancy. How much time? At least a week, maybe more. I have a lot to figure out. Well, you and Sophia were scheduled to be moved back to weekdays next week. But we can make do for a while. Take 2 weeks. We'll count this towards your vacation time. We'll find out more if you need it. I'll sort this out with Nancy. The first 2 days I was free. I struggled to make sense of my new world. I tried to call her several times, but to no avail. Maybe you should prove that she did it. I thought I made a plan. It was a desperate plan. But it was a plan. I went to the library and looked through all the high school yearbooks for the year she and I graduated and the 2 years before and after. I read every word on every page of every book, looking for any mention of anyone named Richard Brown. It took me 3 whole days, but I found 3 of them at home. I looked online to see if their schools had reunion committees. They did also. They had biographies of everyone, where they were now and what they were doing. They even indicated where most of them worked. The first Richard Brown worked in New York City, so it would be difficult to communicate with him. From his biography, it follows that after graduation he entered Ohio State University. Immediately after graduating from there he went to New York for an internship with some members of Congress. The other two still live next door. One sold cars and I called the dealership. I understand that some car salesmen, like some truck drivers, tend to move around town, never staying in one place for very long. So I didn't know if he still worked at the same dealership that was listed in his bio. I was standing in the customer service area of a car dealership listed as Richard Brown's place of business. One of the mechanics walked by and I asked him if Richard Brown still worked there. He does. I then asked the same mechanic to point him out if he was nearby. He wasn't on the showroom floor. He was outside talking to a potential buyer. I thanked the mechanic and left. I knew I was taking a risk, but I left and came back just before they were supposed to close. I was lucky he was still there when he left. I followed him. He stopped at a local bar near the car dealership and went inside. I waited a few minutes and followed him. There was an empty chair next to him and I sat down as beats men in a bar. We started talking. "I'm Michael Willis." I extended my hand to him for a handshake. I watched his face to see if I noticed any signs that he recognized the name Richard Brown. He said we ended up spending a couple of hours talking and buying each other drinks. This continued for 2 more evenings. We drank and chatted. This guy was polite. I got the impression that he could talk anyone into doing anything. I bet he sold a lot of cars. He was funny, smart and handsome. I almost liked this guy. I decided that too many nights in a row might look weird, so I stopped for a while. I still had some free time, so I watched the 3rd, Richard Brown. This guy was a TV news producer, but I couldn't get into the TV studio to see him. I made a copy of his prom photo and, like I did with the other Richard Brown, I sat outside where he was working to see if I could spot him. It was only after line 0 in the evening on the 2nd day of my viewing that I recognized him. He had gained about 45 kg, but nevertheless it was him. The car was waiting for him and he got into it. He leaned over and gave the driver a long, slow kiss. They broke the kiss, then kissed again. The driver then began to drive away. He turned his head to look over his shoulder at the movement. At that point I eliminated this particular Richard Brown from my wife's list of possible partners. So back to talking about the other Brown. During our conversations at the bar, I learned that he had been divorced for almost 3 years and had 2 children. The divorce was mainly his fault. He had a drinking problem and his wife got fed up with it, so she kicked him out. He missed his children and did not see them. Often he still drinks but claims he hasn't gotten drunk since he got divorced. He came to the conclusion that he was drunk the whole time because she drove him to it. She was hot and all, but she drove me crazy, so I drank a lot. He told me I'm much happier not being married. Look at all the people on the Andy Griffith Show. He said they were all happy except one. You know why they were all alone? The only one unhappy was Otis, and he was married, so he continued to drink. At times I almost forgot who he was. His personality was charming. If he was telling the truth, he had more women than any 5 men. I know, at least according to him. But I still needed to find out if one of these women could be my wife, and if so, why did she choose him for what? Why did she need to choose someone for sex? There was never any indication that she was unhappy with our lives or our routine. I was certainly not dissatisfied with either one or the other. I certainly knew that she was harassed. Almost every day she worked, but I never had any reason to think that she took it seriously or acted on it. I had enough free time and was ready to return to work. I called and was told that I was working the day shift and could come back the next day. I worked a full shift and was glad to be back. Although I found myself looking around trying to find Sophia waiting tables. I still tried to talk to her, but to no avail. I began to wonder if she was doing anything to help save the marriage. I also wondered if she dated other men one evening. I had the day off, so I sat outside Melanie's house and waited. Sophia and Melanie got out, got into Sophia's car and drove away. I followed them, but got caught in a traffic jam and lost them. I returned to Melanie's house and waited. They returned about 3 hours later, loaded with packages. I went out and approached them. Sophia, we need to talk. The only thing I want to hear from you is an apology. Otherwise stay away from me and stop stalking me, or I'll get a restraining order. Sophia replied firmly. Sophia, please listen. I have a couple of options we can talk about. No, damn it. Listen, apologize or stay away from me. These are the only 2 options that interest me, she said, and with these words they entered the house. I got into my car and drove away. I was still working during the day and decided to go back and spend more evening time with Brown. He was there about twice as often as I was. I assumed he came when he had no one to go to. Several days had passed since I last saw him and we greeted each other like old friends. One evening we watched a couple enter. We watched, because the woman was simply amazing in every way. If there is an ideal figure, then she had it. If there is a perfect hairstyle, she had it. If there was a perfect dress, she was wearing it okay. She almost had it on. It showed more than it had plunging front and back really deep cut, as the old song goes. She was then to Bill. Neither of us said anything as we watched them walk over to the table and sit down. When she did this, she crossed her legs and the slit in her dress exposed her leg almost to her hip. I suddenly remembered how long it had been since I had seen legs. I was excited. Holy Mother of God, Brown whispered barely audibly. Amen, I replied. I've been with a lot of women, but damn, she's probably the cutest thing I've ever seen. He called the bartender. Who the hell is she? This is Mike and Vicky Carlson. He's one of those personal injury lawyers you see on TV. From time to time they come here for a drink or 2. He just likes to show her off to those of us in the unmoshed crowd. I didn't pay any attention to him because of her, but now I looked and actually recognized him from the TV commercial. Brown spoke. My ex-wife is no slouch, but I've never been as close to having something as nice as this. He nodded toward Vicky Carlson. It started a few months ago. What started? I asked. Yes. I walked into a place I had never been to before. My waitress was awesome. Not in the same class as that Vicky, but cool. My first time there was fine. She and I chatted a little, but nothing more. She was wearing a wedding ring, but that had never stopped me before. Many married women are looking for a stranger. Some of them don't even know it. So I try to help them and convince them that every woman needs another man from time to time. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. I asked her if she was happily married. Of course. But we never seem to do anything other than work and go home. Sometimes we have dinner and dance. Sometimes when he works at night and I work during the day, I go out and have fun. As soon as she told me that, I knew I was going to spend the night with her. Women who go to parties alone when their husbands are working are my favorites. Subconsciously, they want to be unfaithful. It's just a matter of time and opportunity. He took a sip of his drink, then continued. When I was there for the fourth time, she agreed to meet for a drink. This drinking date led to other short dates. We had dinner a couple of times. We even went dancing. I think this girl would rather dance than have sex. And when we danced, oh my God. At first this didn't happen, but later she rubbed her whole body against me. And when she felt that I was excited, she began to rub harder. It was interesting because we were doing the same thing that she said she and her husband were doing, and she seemed completely happy. We have to be careful because of her husband, so we only see each other when they work different shifts. If he works during the day, we see each other. Then one day, while he was working at night and that really got hot, I inhaled sharply. Sophia loved to dance, and we did it as often as we could. We even danced at work when there were no clients. The rest of the staff always watched and applauded. So what happened? I asked at this point. A couple of other bar patrons began to listen to him. He made no effort to keep his voice down and seemed glad to have an audience. He laughed. One evening we went dancing. I wanted to touch her firm buttocks and all the other parts of her body. She seemed a little friendlier and we were dancing passionately on the dance floor. So I just walked over and asked her about what if she was ready to have sex. What did she say? She stopped pressing herself against me and thought for a few seconds. I thought I had made a mistake. She looked at me and I saw that she had made a decision. She smiled. I thought you'd never ask, but we only have about 3 hours until my hubby gets home. Hubby? That's what Sophia called me, hubby. This guy was a real salesman. I had a feeling that he could sell anything to anyone, and that most of his stories about women had at least some truth to them. I was starting to not like him very much. He almost ran to my car to get to my apartment. He continued. She stumbled as she walked up the stairs SDS, and I caught a glimpse of what was under her skirt. I liked what I saw and reached out there. She had panties on and they were wet, man. Then I knew it was going to be a hot night. She squealed, laughed and climbed up the steps. Two more men and two women joined his audience. I could understand the men listening to him, but the women surprised me when we got upstairs. We wasted no time undressing when she was completely naked. She stood there and so did. I was just watching. Every curve of her body was perfect. Her breasts, waist and hips were perfectly proportioned. I looked at her, but I felt myself getting excited. She slowly approached, swaying her hips and shaking her breasts. God, she was sexy. She put her hands on my hips and slowly knelt down, leaned her head forward and got to work. When I finished, she stood up and said, "Your turn." She ran to the bed and literally popped her cute butt on the bed. Now it was my turn to work on her. I heard the other lady say, "God, I'm getting horny from this." Almost all the men around us looked at her when she said that. She blushed. Well, it really was something he was saying. Was he describing my wife? Sophia, like most women, I suppose, loves to be pleased and she loves to give it back. Even some words sounded like hers, but she went more. Maybe this guy had some technique that drove her crazy, but I thought I had it done. I reached for my drink, drank it all down and ordered the other. I didn't know if I wanted him to continue or not. He didn't care what I wanted. He was on a roll. After a long time, she called a halt and said that she needed a rest. Me too. My tongue, neck and back hurt. I brought us both drinks and we lay on the bed sipping them. It didn't take long before she leaned over and started playing with herself, and then she asked to have sex with her. He paused to take a sip. Damn it. Look at me. I'm sweating like a racehorse just thinking about it. I was sweating too, but for a different reason. Sophia used the word Peter when she teased me. She asked, "Does your Peter want me?" It had nothing to do with my size. She just liked the word and we both thought it was funny. I looked around at the people who were listening to him. Two men were laughing and one couple was arguing. I heard a woman tell her companion that she could do the same thing that this man could do, and the man suggested they go try it. They ran out. One man walked up and patted Brown on the back. "Hey dude, if you're still not sleeping with this chick, tell me her name." "I'm still sleeping with her. Of course I still have sex with her. This woman is too good to pass up." This caused a new outburst of laughter and controversy. One man said that no woman is too good to pass up. The woman next to him slapped his arm and said, "Really well." He just gave it up and she ran away with him. After he tried to convince her that he was joking, another guy asked, "Where does she work?" "Nowhere now, she's on a break." Brown said, "Will you take a break?" Some guys shouted, "Tell me where she is and I'll talk to her taking a break." Sophia, as far as I knew, didn't work well. "Where is?" she asked another guy. He looked at his watch. "She's with a best friend now, but later in the evening she will deliver to me pleasure." My stomach jumped to my throat. He said that she is married. Is her husband? I asked. Probably at home. Lots of laughter from his small audience. I wanted to leave, but at the same time I needed to stay. I took out my phone and called Melanie. She answered and loud music started playing in the background. "Hello, Michael. I can't now, we're busy." I heard a voice in the background that I could swear belonged to. "Sophia, tell him I expect an apology when she finishes the conversation." There was laughter. Richard Brown was the popular guy that night and spent more time talking about his exploits. He regaled his growing audience with store of his victories. The men applauded and the women who were listening chided him and called him super stud. The men wanted to believe him, but the women mostly laughed. He claimed that after the divorce he stopped drinking but began practicing more often. In fact, his best friend started handing out stickers that said I had sex with Richard Brown. These stickers were even on the walls of a couple of the women's restrooms in some of the not-so-fashionable bars in the lakeside neighborhood. This comment caught my attention. I excused myself and headed toward the lake. I headed straight to the Foggy Horizon bar. This was the bar Sophia and I were at the night. She said I had sex with Richard Brown. I sat down at the bar and, although I didn't need it, ordered a drink. It was already late and the place was crowded. I continued to monitor the restrooms, especially the women's ones. There was a constant stream of people coming and going. Finally, the establishment began to close. "Drink up. That time to go home." The bartender said the same words that I repeated many times. I hesitated before speaking. "I have a rather strange request." "What is it?" I was talking to my friend. "His name is Richard Brown. He told me that there were I had sex with Richard Brown stickers in the women's restrooms of bars all over the area." I don't believe him, so I was wondering if they were there and if I could see for myself. He started laughing what his friend did. It is a joke, and for a while these stickers were all the rage. Women who had never heard of it before would come here and ask to give them to their girlfriends at wedding parties and stuff like that. We still have some on the booth doors there. "Come on, I'll show you." He walked to the women's restroom door and he knocked to make sure no one was there. We walked in and sure enough there were stickers on each side of the doors on the 4 booths. I breathed a sigh of relief as Sophia went to the bathroom while drunk sat in one of the stalls, saw a sticker on the door and then told me I had sex with Richard Brown. He was just trying to tell me what she saw. It made sense to me. Sophia had been gone for over a month. Brown said he had sex with her for the first time several months ago, and that it had happened on occasion. Since then, it couldn't be my Sophia. Brown might be able to talk people into buying cars, but getting a happily married wife to sleep with him just to have sex. Did he do it sleeping with someone just to jeopardize the marriage? Did she do it? Would she do that? It must be the stickers. She saw them and wanted to tell me about it. I started to feel good. I called Sophia, but she still didn't answer. I called Melanie, just like the last time I called. There was loud music in the background. What do you want? Michael. Her voice sounded a little drunk. I need to talk to Sophia. She's not here. Where is she? None of your business. Is she with someone? It's none of your business either. Please ask her to call me fine when I see her. I'll tell her when will you see her. Probably not until tomorrow later in the evening. Damn. I wonder if she's just tugging at my chain. I hope that wasn't. So look. Tell her that if she's interested in saving this marriage, she can go to the Foggy Horizon bar and use their restroom for a few minutes. But you heard me. I thought if she wanted to work on her marriage, she could go there that night. On the other hand, if she was with someone else, it was almost noon the next day when my phone rang. It was Sophia. I didn't respond to it, but I read the message she left. I saw the stickers. I know what happened. Call me please. I turned it off and never turned it on again. She hasn't spoken to me in weeks, so now it's my turn. I knew she still had the key to our apartment, so I slept in the back of the bar that night. I ignored her calls like she ignored mine, but it hurt. I wanted to see her and hold her and tell her I loved her, but I also wanted her to suffer a little. The next day I was standing at the bar when I heard a familiar voice ordering drinks. I turned around and saw Sophia in her work uniform. I looked at her. She reached into her apron pocket, pulled out something and pinned it to her uniform shirt. I want to have sex with Michael Willis. The sticker read. She must have worked quickly to write it in such a short time. She carried it for the rest of the night and endured a lot of taunts, hooing and yelling. We just smiled at each other every chance we got. Lots of people, men and women, cheered me on. Go for it. Michael needs some help. Michael. More than one guy introduced himself to her as Michael Willis. Toward the end of the evening, the crowd thinned out. Some of the staff began cleaning the establishment. Sophia and I made eye contact. I finished drying my hands with the bar towel and we walked toward each other and met on the dance floor. Another couple was dancing. If you can call the contact at bodies dancing. I'm sorry, I said. When we were just a few centimeters from each other, I reached over and peeled the sticker off her apron, looked at it, smiled and put it in my pocket. Me too, unorthodox. She said, do you want to dance with pleasure? We danced for a couple of minutes. Her familiar curves and bulges felt good on my body and I began aroused for the first time since I saw Vicky Carlson. What are you going to do with this sticker? I asked. I did, clinging to her. She cut both sides of my face and kissed me deeply and tenderly all the while, pressing back as soon as you take me home and undress me. Then I heard a familiar voice. Here she is, here's my girl. Here comes Michael. Are you trying to steal my girl? Michael, Sophia and I separated and just looked at each other. Our eyes were huge. I take it. You know him? I asked her. She didn't answer. Richard Brown grabbed her, pulled her towards him and kissed her. After the kiss, he held her at arm's length. I could see her eyes and they were full of panic and fear as she looked at me. How soon can you get out of here, baby? He asked quietly but still loud enough for me and the other people near us to hear. I need you. She stepped towards me. Michael. I raised my hand to stop her. Michael. Please. What's happening? Brown asked, approaching Sophia. Get away from me. She pushed him away and came up to me. Michael. It only happened once. Please talk to me. What do you mean? One time, Brown asked. It's been at least 6. And why the hell are you telling Michael this? Let's go. Leave me alone. I spoke. So this is the waitress you told me about, the best lover you've ever had. That's her body. Now she wants to act arrogant. She wasn't like that at all. When she satisfied me, I couldn't stop looking at Sophia. After Brown's last statement, she simply collapsed to the floor. At the place where she and I worked, in front of our colleagues and visitors, Brown announced that he had sex with her. It was almost unbearably awkward for everyone, except obviously Brown. He approached her. "You were walking." She shook her head. "Well, to hell with you. You can have her, Michael. She's good, but not that good. No, take it. I don't need her anymore." "Did you sleep with her too?" "Yes, more than 3 years she is my wife, but not for long your wife." Holy crap. I've never seen anyone move so fast in my life. I shouted after him, "Hey, come back and get her. Now she's yours, to hell with it. I don't want her." Nancy, the night manager, approached her. "I think you should leave." He motioned to other employees to escort her. My mind was filled with visions of my wife and Brown, but at the same time it was devoid of thoughts. If that makes any sense. I robotically cleaned the bar, trying to cope with my emotions and experiences. Nancy came up to me. "Go home. Get some rest. Call me when you're ready to come back." I did as he suggested. I went home. When I went inside, I made sure to bolt the door. She wasn't going to come in to get her things while I was ready. Not even an hour had passed when I heard turning the key in the lock. That I heard a knock. "Michael, let me in." "You're welcome." "Michael, leave. You don't live here anymore." "Michael, please let me at least take some of my things for what you picked up your makeup when you left. You don't need any clothes. So you're all set." "I'm not." "Oh, that's right. These girls get paid. You were doing this for fun with someone other than your husband. So I think that makes you in worse." The voice became louder. "I am not like that. Eve, you can pick up your things tomorrow. Be here at 9 because by 10 all that's left of you will be in the dumpster." "Michael, please get your cheating butt out of here." The knock came shortly before 9 the next morning. I looked through the small glass in the door. I didn't see Sophia, but I saw Melanie. I opened the door. "What do you need?" "I came to pick up Sophia's things." I pointed to several trash bags that I filled with her things. "Here they are. She can choose the furniture as she pleases, or it will be removed from here in an hour." "She can't do this." "Why not?" "She's ill." "Is she sick?" "What's her problem?" "Not enough sex." "Come on, Michael. She drank a whole bottle of vodka last night and she's in bad shape." "Is she in bad shape?" "How do I look?" "Melanie. And you, her best friend. You helped her get laid for what?" "For whom?" A smooth-talking jerk, who described in detail to the audience how he had said with her. Then he comes to her work and declares in front of her husband and about a dozen other witnesses that he needs some affection from her. Yes, she's really sick and you to now take her things and get out. She began to carry the bags to the door and you can tell her that I want my grandmother's ring back. 3 days later, half of our furniture was gone. I put everything she liked, including our bed, on the curb for everyone to pick up. I had no idea if she was making out with Brown or someone else on the bed, so I got rid of it. Then there was a knock on the door. I looked back and it was Sophia. I let her in. "What is wrong with you?" she asked down there. "People are taking my furniture." "This is not your furniture. You left this apartment, leaving me in the furniture. So you no longer have rights to it and give me my grandmother's ring. You gave it to me. It's mine. Give it to me, or I'll rip your finger off and take. It is intended for the woman who will forever be my wife, not for some cheating cheater who could be talked into sleeping with some jerk from the bar. Now give it to me." She began to back away toward the door and at the same time pulled off the ring. I would never hurt her, but I was angry. She took it off and threw it on the floor. I picked it up and put it in my pocket. I thought we could talk about everything. She said no way. Go talk to Richard Brown. He's a good conversationalist. He persuaded you to sleep with him. Was he the only one who could persuade you to cheat? Or were there others? Now she stood with her back to the door and slid down until she was on the floor and the tears flowed. I just wanted to have a little fun. Michael. He walked up to the bar and started talking to me. You were there the first couple of times, but there were so many visitors that you didn't notice him. After a few visits, he offered to buy me a drink elsewhere. He worked at night and I met him. He had the gift of gab and soon he started playing with my breasts. You know how I feel when you pinch me for them? Well, he pinched them and I went crazy. Then he touched me with his finger. He did it on the dance floor. God, it was hot. Are you saying that anyone who gets close enough to you to pinch your breast can have sex with you? No, but who are you? What happened to my wife? Melanie said, oh, never mind what Melanie said. But she sleeps with a lot of guys. Every time we meet, she tries to persuade me. She says you're boring and don't want me to have fun. Did she tell you that she's been trying to get me into bed? Since I've known you, I told you to stay away from her. She is my best friend. She cares about me. Taking care of you used to be my job. How many guys has she set you up with? I'm guessing you picked up Brown yourself. Now, how many guys did she set you up with? Please. 2, 5, 10, more than 10. I forget it. I do not want to know. You need to leave, she slowly rose to her feet. Can I at least walk around and see if there's anything else of mine there? I can give you nothing in this apartment. Nothing is yours. What about the ownership of my car? It's in one of the bags Melanie took along with your photos, except for our wedding album. I threw it away. She stood in front of the door. I pulled it away, opened it and pointed to the exit. Michael, please get out. Her head was down and she was crying, and she entered the hall. I closed the door behind her. That was the end of our marriage. I went back to work. It was hard to look at the dance floor where a conversation had taken place. Nancy, the night manager, was sitting at the bar. I gave him a glass of ice water. You know, Michael, we own a bar and restaurant at the Skyline Hotel downtown. It's called Horizon Sky. There's also live piano music every evening and a small dance floor. If you want, we can transfer you there. It's more upscale than here and they pay better. Besides, it will allow you to leave here 3 days later. I was at my new bar. I met with the day manager and she introduced me to the staff before we opened for the day. I had to start working for a few days. The days meant we got there at 10 am, got the place ready, opened the doors at 11 and worked until 7:00 p.m. The night shift started at 7 and worked until closing, which was usually 2 a.m. but sometimes lasted a little longer. The Skyline Hotel was very upscale and I loved being there. The day before I started my new job, I initiated divorce proceedings and decided to stop shaving and grow a beard. Sophia and I didn't have much. In fact, when I went online to check our bank account, more than half of the money was gone. Sophia got advice from someone, probably Melanie. Oh well, the court would have given it to her anyway. Then I did the usual things, like cancel credit cards. I said card because we only had one. I cancelled it and applied for a new account until I received the card. I could only use cash. The phones were her name, so I opened my account for that too. She was served at Melanie's. I have no idea how she reacted. One day it dawned on me that Brown said he had slept with Sophia at least 6 times. This meant that I had sex with her after he and God knows how many others had been inside her. I needed to see a doctor. I didn't have any symptoms, but at the time I had no idea what the symptoms of sexually transmitted diseases were or what their incubation period was. Results of gonorrhea and syphilis. I wanted to kill her. I already said I would never hurt her, but when I heard I had syphilis, all bets were off. I could easily strangle her, Not to mention that creep Brown. I could never blame a man or woman for wanting more, but actively seeking out married women or men is absolutely reprehensible. You have to be a certain type of trash. To do that and then to be so careless as to infect them was beyond reason. I started calling Sophia and telling her how I felt about her contracting syphilis. But why bother? A few days later, her brother knocked on my door. I had just returned from vaccinations against sexually transmitted diseases. I let him in. You son of a, you cheated on my sister, and now she is one of those things. I must kill you. There was murder in his eyes, and he scared the crap out of me. "The tiger," I said, stepping away from him. "If you're talking about sexually transmitted diseases, then everything is the other way around. Your sister cheated on me. Let at least one guy die. She infected me." "It's a lie. He said you will say so. I'm going to kick your ass." He walked toward me and I started backing away again, but there was really nowhere to go. "Well," I said as calmly as I could, "before you do, that there are dozen or more witnesses who heard the man say he had sex with her at least 6 times and she didn't deny it. Then she told me that she did it for fun. Just for fun. Jimmy. She cheated on me with a worthless son of a for fun. And Melanie helped her help her. Damn it, cheered her up. He looked like he had calmed down. Jimmy had some problems in his life. He had served time in prison for assault. So I knew you wouldn't hesitate to beat me to a pulp. I know you have no reason to believe me over your sister. But you know me and you know that I'm not a liar and I'm certainly not a cheater. The guy you need to talk to is Richard Brown." I told him where Brown worked, and if you have any influence over your sister, you will try to take her away from Melanie. I tried for years, but she didn't listen to me. He looked at me intently, not wanting to believe me, but after a few seconds he turned and left. But days later, I read in a newspaper left on the bar that a potential car buyer was test driving a new car from a local dealership. He was accompanied by salesman Richard Brown. The potential buyer stopped the car, saying he heard a noise. Both he and Brown got out of the car, but he beat Brown almost to death. He left Brown on the side of the road and returned the car to the dealership. The newspaper quoted police as saying Mr. Brown was a local Casanova who was known to be responsible for several marriage breakdowns over the past couple of years. Blood tests showed that he had several different sexually transmitted diseases, including syphilis and gonorrhea. Keep it up, Jimmy, and whoever infected Brown with these diseases. I thought, reading the article and laughing. I wondered how many of them Sophia had. The same newspaper reported that the trailer belonging to Miss Melanie Taylor was completely destroyed by fire. The trailer was not insured and was a total loss. One of these days I'm going to have a serious talk with Jimmy about his anger management issues. Then I'm going to buy him a couple of drinks. A thought flashed through my mind about where Melanie would live now and whether Sophia was going to move in with her. Then I realized that I didn't care. I expected the police to question Brown and me. I was questioned, but nothing ever came of it. I got the impression that finding whoever beat him up was about the same priority as chasing down pedestrians on the street. As time passed, I liked my new haircut more and more. I also liked my new beard. At first, I messed it up a little but decided to trim it. After I did this, I received many comments from my clients. I also liked the fact that my divorce was final. Apparently, when Sophia received the papers, she signed them and sent them back. She didn't bother to show up in court the day the case went before the judge. My antibiotic shots did their job and I was declared disease-free. The communication never seemed to appear on my radar screen. It was also time for my lease to expire, so I found an apartment closer to work. I didn't replace most of the furniture I threw away, but I did buy a new bed. My new apartment was so small that the king-size bed took up most of the bedroom and was difficult to carry up 3 flights of stairs. Luckily, I had friends who helped me. One of them, Tom Peterson, was a friend for a long time. We grew up in the same area, as did Sophia, Melanie, and several other friends. When I called and asked if he could help me move, he showed up with his friend Bryce. That was his name, and when Tom introduced us, Bryce, said Michael Willis. Are you Michael Willis? Holy crap. I know your ex-wife. My ex-wife. I corrected him. Did you sleep with her too? L. No, but I'm married to Melanie's cousin and of course I heard your name mentioned. He didn't really like Melanie and he began to fill me in on the events around her. He told me that after Melanie's trailer burned down, she and Sophia rented a furnished house in the same trailer park. He told me that the couple of times he was around Melanie and Sophia together, Sophia was inconsistent in her comments about me. And she was sober. I was a complete jerk. But when she drank a little, there was a lot of crying and thinking about how to get me back. Melanie kept telling her that I didn't deserve her. But again it was when she was drunk that Sophia defended me and admitted that it was all her fault. Another tidbit he shared was that both Sophia and Melanie blamed me for what happened to Brown. I asked him if Brown had visited them. Yet no, he said. I think he called Sophia a couple of times before he got his ass kicked, but she wasn't interested. He also told me that Sophia worked as a waitress and gave me the name of the place. On my next day off, I went there. I walked in, looked around and saw that she was waiting tables with my new beard. I thought she wouldn't recognize me. She moved from table to table as efficiently as ever and chatted openly with her customers. Twice I saw her pull her hands away from her, something she had to do practically her entire life as a bar waitress. I could also see and hear her joking with them while either she or they were talking, but the minute she turned away from them, the smile disappeared and the slight sadness appeared on her face. The smile returned the second she started chatting with another customer. I had no idea why I was there watching her, so I left. I was working the night shift when Sophia came in and she was with a man. She looked like she had lost a few pounds. As far as I knew, she had no idea that I worked there. I took a piece of paper from under the counter and wrote a note. I don't know if you know, but the woman here with you cheated on her husband and gave him a sexually transmitted disease. Proceed at your own risk from time to time. I left the counter and went to where I could see the dining area of the restaurant between the salad and the entry key. I saw Sophia excuse herself and go into the ladies' room. I folded my notes and walked over to their table. Sorry, sir, I said, but someone gave it to me so that I could give it to you. I handed him a note by the time I returned to the bar. He was already leaving the restaurant. I walked back to where I could see their table. I watched as Sophia sat up and took the note that her bow had placed where she could see it. She seemed to read it, crumpled it up, stood up and walked out. She walked 3 meters away from me and didn't recognize me, but I could see tears in her eyes. The waitress stood at their table with their NTRC. Not knowing what to do with them, I approached her. They're both gone, but I know where you can send their bill. Part of me enjoyed writing the note and seeing the results, but another part of me thought it was a cheap tea Richard that only a coward would do. I didn't think I'd ever do it again. Once was enough. The call came 2 days later. It was Sophia. I know it was you. Do you know who I was with? You sent a note. I lied. I have no idea what you're talking about. Got to be you, damn it. What are you talking about? Every time I get a new job, someone calls and says I have an STD and they fire me. Whenever I date a guy, someone tells him that I'm a cheater and that I have an STD. What exactly does this have to do with me? It's not me. I haven't talked to you, so I have no idea where you work. So you're barking up the wrong tree. This is probably Richard Brown trying to get even with you for not sleeping with him anymore. Or are you still sleeping with him? He said you were the best he'd ever had, which makes me think he didn't have much, because, as far as I was concerned, you were always kind of mediocre. No, I don't sleep with him, and that's also because of you. She said he said you would still sleep with him if he was able to. Of course what you beat him up and now he'll never be able to have sex again. Oh, this is very bad. I said with all the sarcasm I was capable of. Maybe you can find someone else to infect you with diseases. Or you can infect them. Like you infected me, and she hung up. I laughed. I did send one note to her dinner companion. but I didn't send any others. Perhaps it was Brown. He may have been retaliating, but I would think you would most likely trust to get revenge on the person who beat him up. If I were him, I would think it was me, not her. 3 days later the couple arrived. They were well dressed, like professionals. They had dinner at the restaurant, then went to a bar to have a drink and listen to music. Their waitress brought them their first round of drinks, while the woman was in the ladies' room. I watched as the man added something to her drink, then picked it up and turned it over in his hands. I walked up to the table. Sorry, but I mixed the wrong drinks. It's my mistake, so I'll replace them. I took both glasses, took them behind the counter and set them aside. I mixed two identical drinks and waited for the woman to return before serving them. I then called the manager over and told her what I had done. She called the police. The couple finished their drinks and the man ordered another. Two police officers entered through the back door and went straight to the manager's office. The manager pointed one of our security cameras direct cable. I personally delivered the drinks. A couple of minutes later, the woman approached the pianist and made a request. The camera recorded the man throwing something into the woman's drink while she was talking to the pianist. As soon as it hit the glass, two policemen came out and took him to the office. They also took away the drink I had placed behind the counter. They asked the lady to follow them into the manager's office. Then they all went out the back door. 2 days later, I was ready to start work. It was just before 7:00 in the evening. I was in the staff locker room putting on my official work shirt, bow tie and vest, when the manager told me someone was waiting for me. She sat at the far end of the bar alone. She had been there since 5:00 p.m. and was drinking iced tea. He said, "Oh great. I thought Sophia's back." I walked out and stood behind the counter. The day shift bartender tapped me on the shoulder and jerked his head towards the woman. I looked and it wasn't Sophia. I didn't know who she was. I took a towel from the bar, dried my hands, threw it over my shoulder, where I usually keep it, and walked over to her. "Hi," I said as casually as I could. "I'm Michael. I understand you were waiting for me." She smiled. "Yes, it is. My name is Linda Alexander, and I know I owe thank you for what? For saving me from the scumbag who tried to drug me not once but twice. Oh, I didn't recognize you. Are you okay?" "Yes, thank you. If it weren't for you, I would be in real trouble." It didn't mean anything. Well, he is like that or was like that until he was released on bail. "I'm guessing your husband wouldn't need a date-rape drug, so he must be the boyfriend god." "No," she said, "heck, a colleague or was. He was fired when the company found out what he had done." "Have you two been dating for a long time?" "No, this was the first time. He was such a nice guy at work. He was hired 6 months ago but only started harassing me 2 weeks ago. I have a rule that I never date my co-workers, but he wore me down." "Did you have any indication that he was going to try something like this?" "No, the dinner was wonderful and he behaved like a true gentleman. He was just like the office guy, funny and intelligent, not to mention. I thought he looked really good. Well, it's all over now. But she said we still have to meet him in court." She laughed. "Yes, well, you can rest assured that you will be called as a witness." I didn't think about. It's okay. The chance of putting such a jerk in jail is not a problem for me. Linda Alexander sat at the bar for a long time before leaving and we talked at every opportunity between customers. I discovered that she and the man who tried to drug her were both architects. If I could go to college, this is where I would want to go. She thanked me again and said goodbye, saying that she would see me again. A couple of days after this, an employee from the district attorney's office visited me. He wanted to discuss my appearance at the trial over the next few weeks. I had several meetings with him and other members of the DOS staff. I never saw Linda Alexander. In the meantime, I met a couple of women who became my regular partners. There's nothing better in the world than having fun. I enjoyed the company of both of them for about 3 months. There were no claims to exclusivity for all of us. It was for pleasure if I spent the night with one. The other was fine with it, because she knew the next night was hers. One evening they were sitting together at a bar when a woman and two men walked in. The three of them sat down at a table, drank and danced for a couple of hours. They were free in their feelings because she kissed them both equally. My two girls, Judy and Anna, did their fair share of dances. When asked in between dances, a lot of our attention was focused on the trio. It was Judy who first mentioned the old movie Paint Your Wagon, in which the woman had two husbands, so she saw nothing wrong with what the three were doing. And I then suggested that it would be funny to have two men at the same time. How about it, Michael? Would you agree to a threesome? Judy asked me. It depends on whether there are three of us. I said and walked away to serve the client. When I returned to the girls, they were whispering. They stopped as I approached. What do you mean depends on a threesome? Asked Anna. Well, participating in Boy Girl is not on my bucket list. However, I walked away to help another client and stayed to chat with him for a couple of minutes. We were interrupted by Judy slamming her glass on the counter. How about we do a little service here? She said, laughing. I grinned, took the towel off my shoulder and walked back to them, wiping the counter as I went. They had been sitting on their bar stools when I left, but now they were both leaning over the counter, trying to get as close to me as possible. As I approached them, Judy whispered. However, I chuckled again and leaned closer to both of them. However, I don't know a single purebred man who would turn down the opportunity to have a threesome with two women. I whispered back. They looked at me, then at each other, then leaned back in their chairs together. Girls, would you like another drink? I'll treat you. I said. They refused, saying they needed to leave. I was busy for the rest of my shift. It was already 3:00 in the morning when I returned home. I took a shower and, still drying myself, headed to my bedroom and went to bed. I had just thrown the towel on the floor and was ready to jump into bed. Someone knocked on my door. I took a towel, wrapped it around my waist and opened the door. We bought some snacks, Anna said, as she walked past me with Judy right behind her. They had both been to my apartment before and had actually spent the night on different occasions. Yes, we thought you might be hungry, Judy giggled. I looked from one to the other and they seemed hot smoking. Where's the food? Who said anything about food? Asked Anna. You said no. I said we brought something to eat. There is a difference. Yes, Judy said as she began to unbutton her blouse. She was unbuttoned and had no bra on. I had seen her breast before, but as always, the sight of any bare breasts usually makes any man aroused. She took off her blouse and kissed me softly and tenderly. Hey, this is convenient. Anna laughed and pointed to my towel. Looks like he was waiting for us. Judy said and brought her lips as close to mine as she could, without actually touching them, and sighed rather than spoke. Is that all, Michael? Are you waiting for us? She then kissed me while reaching down to loosen my towel and let it fall to the floor. My knees buckled. Judy stood on one side of me and Anna stood on the other. They took my hands and led me backwards to my bedroom. I felt my legs hit the edge of the bed and they pushed me down to where I was sitting. Judy finished taking tack off her blouse. I was wearing a shirt and pulled it over her head. She was also without a bra. It was the perfect threesome. The rest of the night was absolute heaven. The double bed, which I thought was too big, turned out to be perfect. The three of us were together for about 3 months. But then Judy went on a cruise with some of her sorority sisters and came back smitten with one of the ship's junior officers. Anna, on the other hand, received a promotion in the company and was transferred to Phoenix. I was going to miss them, but at the same time I was relieved. I needed some rest. The girls and I had been together for a couple of months. When the trial of the guy who attempted to drug Linda began, I testified as a witness for the prosecution and the guy got 5 years in prison. The trial lasted only 1 day. I saw Indy Alexander there and we talked briefly. One evening, Bryce walked into a bar. He laughed and told me that Sophia and Melanie's friendship was over one evening. They both got drunk and started arguing. Sophia accused Melanie of leading her into temptation and causing the divorce. Melanie responded by accusing Sophia of being a witch, which I thought was an example of the pot calling the kettle black. Melanie eventually left in a drunken stupor, got into her car and less than a block away, crashed into another car. The car crashed through a fence and into a house. She wrecked her uninsured car. She was sentenced to 6 months in prison for drunk driving without insurance and leaving the scene of an accident. She also lost her license for a year. I told Bryce that I was no longer interested in hearing about Sophia or Melanie unless I considered that part of my life closed. I was promoted at work today, manager, so I no longer work nights except to cover for the night manager when she had a day off. She did the same for me one Wednesday night. We had a particularly busy crowd, so we were extremely busy. We loved being in the restaurant and bar business. This meant people ate and drank. I was sitting at the far end of the bar with a glass of ice water, and I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around and saw Linda Alexander. I stood up and turned to her. "Good evening," I said. "How are you?" "I'm fine. Thank you, and you?" "Pretty good. Thank you. What can I do for you?" "Nothing. We just stopped by for dinner and I thought I'd say hello." "Fine. Enjoy." I watched as she joined the couple and the three of them entered the restaurant. Later that evening, I helped a woman get her husband at the door and into a taxi after he had too much to drink. I made a mental note to remind myself to talk to our servers about keeping an eye on our guests. I watched the taxi pull away, turned to go back inside and almost collided with Linda. "I was looking for you," she said. "I'm here. I see still looking out for people." "It's just part of the job," I said in an exaggerated Texas accent. "Look, I don't want to seem pushy, and to be honest, I've never done this before, but would you be interested in having a drink with me sometime?" She quickly added as a thank you. I just looked at her. Of all the things I could expected, asking Linda Alexander out was never on my radar. "I'm sorry I put you in an awkward position. You were either married or in a relationship, so please excuse me." He was about to leave. "Hey, wait a minute." I grabbed her hand and turned her to face me. "I'm not married and I don't have a relationship. It's just that." No beautiful woman had ever asked me out on a date before, and I'm still in shock. "I'd love to have a drink with you." I smiled. "Great. How about Friday? Or are you working?" "Friday will be perfect. What time and where should I pick you up?" "Well, since I asked you, I'll pick you up at 7:00. Just tell me where." I gave her my address. I was ready at 7:00 when she pulled up. I had no idea what to wear, and for the first time in my life, I understood how a woman feels. On a first date, I settled on slacks and a sports jacket with a tie. "Would you mind if we moved down from drinks to dinner?" she asked. "I missed lunch today." "Not at all." That was my answer. We went to a very nice restaurant, had dinner, danced, and she took me home. When we got there, she got out of the car as if she was going to walk me to the door. I decided that thank you went far enough, so I told her that she didn't need to walk me to the door. "How else can I kiss you goodnight?" she asked. I walked around the car on her side. "I can fix this," I told her. I hugged her. "Thank you for a wonderful evening." Then I kissed her, not on the cheek, but directly on the lips. She got into her car and drove away. I literally flew up the stairs to my apartment, wondering how I got so lucky. However, my good mood was short-lived when I realized that I had not received her phone number. As I usually do when I'm resting, I turned out all my pockets, including my jacket pockets. Reaching into the left pocket of my jacket, I pulled out a business card. It was Linda's business card, and on the back she wrote her mobile number. She must have slipped it there during one of our dances. It was a business card, so it had the name and address of her company on it. I didn't call her over the weekend, but on Monday morning I ordered 2 dozen roses to be delivered to her office. At 1:00 in the afternoon, I answered the phone at the Bar Skyline Bar. "Can I help you?" Not the biggest name in the world, but he was one of the best and most popular night spots in the city. The man who first opened the establishment served aboard the USS Coral during World War I, so he named his establishment after the ship. There was even a large model of the ship behind the counter. "Is this Michael?" The voice said this as "Hello. This is Linda. I just received some beautiful roses." "Thank you, welcome, my lady." There was a short pause before I spoke again. "I was going to call you later to see if you would like to have dinner with me again." "I would like that." "When did you mean?" "Well, today is Monday and Friday is usually the big date night. So how about tomorrow?" She laughed. "I don't know where you developed your logic, but tomorrow sounds great." She gave me her address and I asked her 70 would be convenient. It was a very nice house in a very good area, and we spent another very pleasant evening for the next few weeks. We met at least 3 times a week. I found out that she got divorced after 5 years of marriage because they simply fell out of love with each other. They were still good friends. In fact, she said they were better friends now than when they were married, and he now lived on the West Coast. The house she lived in was their home and she got it in the divorce. Of course, I almost felt sorry for the poor guy paying the mortgage on a beautiful house he couldn't live in. I felt even worse the first time Linda and I made love in this house on their bed and we showered together in the same shower she shared with him. We were happy for about 6 months. We laughed and joked and met quite often, and every time we went out. I was grateful that I worked around the clock, except as I said when the night manager was free. As usual, I called her to see when she wanted to go out again. "Sorry, Michael, but my ex is in town and I'm going to have dinner with him." "Okay, certainly, have fun." I hesitated. My first thought was that she told me that they had just fallen out of love with each other and that they were better friends now than when they were married. I waited 2 days before calling her again. "Michael, Cliff is still here and we're chatting about some things, and besides, my company has a deadline for a new building we're designing and I need to run some numbers." I heard stories about exes sleeping together and began to wonder if Linda and Cliff were having sex. I was in a quandary. I had no reason to believe that she and Cliff slept together, but I also had no reason to believe that Sophia was cheating. The difference was that Sophia and I were married and Linda and I were not. I didn't have to like it, but she was free to sleep with whoever she wanted. Still, part of me wanted to know the truth. Part of me wanted to ask her, but the rest of me didn't want to know if she slept with him. I called her and the call went straight to voicemail. I called her office. "Sorry, but Miss Alexander is unavailable. Would you like to leave a message?" No messages. A week passed. I was in my manager's office, and I called her again. She answered, "Hello. How are you?" "Well, we haven't spoken in over a week and I just thought, oh, Michael, I've been so busy. Let me ask you a question. Certainly, is Cliff still in town? Why are you asking about him? Why are you worried about him?" Then I just blurted it out. "Are you sleeping with him?" I asked. The next thing I heard was silence as she ended the call. This pretty much told me what I needed to know. I returned to the restaurant and kitchen to check on how things were going. I sulked for the rest of my shift when I got home. As usual, I emptied my pockets and rested and went to the shower. After my shower, I put on my robe, poured myself a gin and tonic and sat down to watch the news. I sat down in my deep chair, leaned back, pressed the on button on the remote control and took a sip of my drink. Before I could do this, someone banged on my door with such force that it seemed as if it was flying off its hinges. I stood up, put down my glass and opened the door. Miss Linda Alexander burst into the room and started, "You're an idiot. You are an insensitive idiot. I'm a single woman, over 21 years old. I can damn well do whatever I want. No insecure man is going to change that. If I want to sleep with my ex-husband and 20 other men, that's my right, just like it's your right to do the same." As she took a deep breath, "The point is, you can't tell me who to sleep with, just like I can't tell you who to sleep with. I didn't want to sleep with anyone. But you want to? What do you mean? Didn't want to? Don't you want to now? Not if you slept with your ex-husband and 20 others. Damn it. I'm not going to sleep with anyone. But you. That's what I was trying to tell you then. Where have you been for more than a week? I was working. Our construction plans are behind schedule and we will be fined if we don't make it. You didn't have time for me, but you had time for Cliff. We were working on a deal to buy my house. He's getting married again and called to pay for 2 houses. So he wanted to know if I take over the payments and buy it. I didn't have to do this because the divorce gave me that right. But I saw no reason to keep her asking him and I can afford it. So we made a deal where I would pay the mortgage and he would pay a certain amount each month until it is paid. Everything is quite civilized. As I already told you, he and I are still friends. We just fell out of love with each other. Why did he stay with you? Are you going to be this jealous for the rest of our lives? Yes, where did he stay with my sister? About the killer met from my house and you never slept with him. This is a stupid question. Of course I slept with him. He was my husband. He gave me back some of my sarcasm. I mean, why he was here this time. Are you not listening? No, I didn't sleep with him. What? About 20 other guys. Jerk, call me a drink. Then take off your clothes and I'll show you who I'm sleeping with. I stood there for a moment just looking at her. Then I went to the kitchen, poured her a drink and handed it to her. Here you go. I said thanks. He replied, taking a sip. Now are you going to take off your clothes or do I have to do it for you? I didn't need to be asked twice. I took off my robe and tossed it onto the couch. Linda smiled and put her drink down on the table. She walked over to me, slowly unbuttoning her blouse and then leaned in to kiss me. Her lips were soft and I felt a surge of desire. He stumbled back to the bedroom clothes, falling off along the way. By the time we reached the bed, we were both naked and eager. The rest of the night was a blur of passion and tenderness. It felt like all the pent-up frustration and confusion melted away. In that moment we fell asleep, tangled in each other's arms, and for the first time in weeks, I felt at peace. The next morning I woke up to find Linda still asleep beside me. I watched her for a moment, marveling at how beautiful she looked. In the early morning light, I gently got out of bed, careful not to wake her, and went to the kitchen to make us some coffee. As I waited for the coffee to brew, I couldn't help but think about how much my life had changed in such a short time. From the heartbreak with Sophia to the uncertainty with Linda. It felt like I had been on an emotional roller coaster. Linda eventually woke up and joined me in the kitchen. We sat at the table, sipping our coffee and talking about everything and nothing. It felt comfortable, like we had known each other for years. We spent the rest of the weekend together, going out for dinner, watching movies and just enjoying each other's company. As the weeks went by, Linda and I grew closer. We spent more time together and I found myself falling for her more and more. She was smart, funny and caring, everything I had ever wanted in a partner. But there was always that nagging doubt in the back of my mind, the fear that she might still have feelings for her ex-husband, Cliff. One evening, as we were having dinner at her place, I decided to address my concerns. Linda, can I ask you something? I said, putting down my fork. Of course, Michael. What is it about Cliff? I know you said you're just friends now, but I can't help but worry. You still have feelings for him? Linda looked at me, her expression serious. Michael, I understand why you feel that way, but I need you to trust me. Tiff and I are done. And we're over a long time ago. Yes, we still care about each other as friends, but that's it. You're the one I want to be with. Please believe me. I nodded, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. I do believe you, Linda. I just needed to hear it. She reached across the table and took my hand. I love you, Michael. You mean the world to me. I love you too, Linda. From that moment on, our relationship felt stronger than ever. We continued to build a life together, and I couldn't have been happier. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs, and just when you think everything is perfect, something unexpected happens. One day, while I was at work, I received a call from Sophia. I hadn't heard from her in months, and seeing her name on my phone screen brought back a flood of memories. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello, Michael. It's Sophia. I need to talk to you." "What is it?" "Sophia, it's about Melanie. She's in trouble and I don't know what to do." I sighed, feeling a mix of frustration and concern. "What kind of trouble?" "She's been arrested. They found drugs in her car and she's facing serious charges." "I know we haven't talked in a while, but I didn't know who else to call. Why should I care?" "Sophia, you both made your choices. I know, Michael. I know I messed up, but Melanie is still my friend. Please, can you help?" I took a deep breath, weighing my options. "All right, I'll see what I can do, but this doesn't change anything between us." "Sophia, I understand. Thank you, Michael." I hung up the phone and sat back in my chair, feeling a mix of emotions. I didn't want to get involved in Sophia and Melanie's drama, but I couldn't ignore the plea for help. I decided to visit Melanie in jail and see what was going on. When I arrived at the jail, Melanie looked a mess. She was disheveled and clearly stressed out. "Michael, thank you for coming," she said, her voice shaky. "What's going on?" "Melanie, what happened?" "I don't know. The cops pulled me over and they found drugs in my car. But I swear, Michael, they weren't mine. I don't even know how they got there." "Do you have a lawyer?" "Not yet, I don't have the money for one." I sighed, feeling the weight of the situation. "All right, I'll help you find a lawyer, but this is the last time. Melanie, I can't keep bailing you out." "Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate it." I spent the next few days helping Melanie get legal representation and trying to figure out what had happened. It was a stressful time, but I couldn't turn my back on someone in need, even if it was Melanie. In the midst of all this, Linda was incredibly supportive. She understood why I had to help Melanie, even though it brought up a lot of old wounds. Her understanding and compassion only made me love her more. Eventually we found out that Melanie had been set up by one of her so-called friends. It took a while, but we managed to clear her name. It was a relief to have that chapter finally closed, and I hoped it would be the last time I had to deal with any drama from my past. With that behind us, Linda and I continued to build our future together. We moved in together and life was good. But as always, life has its ups and downs, and the true test of a relationship is how you handle those challenges together.